Hi all, welcome back. So we're just coming into our second session now. First session we just introduced the idea about DJing and a little introduction into the series. And I also mentioned that we'd have a couple of people also helping, Tim and Mike. So I'm with Tim today, and Tim's going to give us a bit of an introduction into different DJ equipment and the things that are involved. So he's going to run through the different equipment and just get up to speed there. So I'll hand over to Tim now.
Okay, how you doing? So you can see we've got lots of equipment out here. These are examples of the main types of DJ equipment that you have, but also interestingly enough, it kind of shows the evolution of DJing as well, if you want to talk about the history of it with your students. So obviously here we have a record player, which is what the DJs first started with. This is a Technics one, so it's industry standard. This is actually a 1200, but you see the 1200s and the 1210s were the key record players when it came for DJing for many years, until the CDJs were invented, really. So, yeah, vinyl is what it plays. Lovely. So these were being used for DJing from around the 70s until, I mean, they still are now, but in the 90s, late 90s, around that kind of time, the CDJs came out. So this is a Pioneer CDJ 1000. The CD goes in the front, like so. And you can see it's set up very similar to the record player because it's designed for DJs, so that basically that you can operate it in the same way that you would operate a vinyl deck, but you can play CDs. So again, you play, what have we got by there? Lovely. And so it's got the wheel that you can spin. So just like I can do that, like I can do that. And it's designed to be very much like a record player because that's what they wanted to do. And this was a game changer because it meant that you no longer had to carry around bags and bags and bags of records, which are very heavy. It also meant that you didn't have to go and spend all your money buying records because you could just burn CDs and you can have loads of tracks on one CD and you can play them from there. So again, like, yeah, it opened a lot of doors, and there were a lot of CD decks on the market to begin with that were just not as good as a record player. But really, when Pioneer did this CDJ 100, it was the first one where most DJs were like, yeah, okay, this is to a similar standard. And now they still make decks, but they're going up to like 2000s. And they've got a whole new range now by Pioneer called Nexus. But Pioneer really are the leaders when it comes to CD decks, just like Technics were the leaders when it comes to record players. And now over here, the next stage in the evolution of DJing, if you like, would be one of these, which is like a controller console. So you can put USBs straight into it, and this really, there's no space to put decks in, to put CDs in this. This is just really meant for playing MP3s, really, and WAVs and digital audio files. So there's no record player, there's no CD. This is all, you can put a USB in there. But you can see the setup similar. You've still got one of these. You've still got a track, the pad to move, and fundamentally it does exactly the same thing as the record player was doing way back in the day. We've just moved into a digital world, and it's all about ease, really. So another development that I'd like to show you is this box here. Okay, now there's a couple of different manufacturers who do something similar, but this is called a DVS system, or it's a digital vinyl system. So what this allows you to do is still have vinyl, but you can control digital files with it. So this record that's playing Ed Sheeran by here,
and I can't sweep you off of your feet.
this is not an Ed Sheeran record. If I was to put this on a normal turntable, you'd just hear a boo, like just a controlled tone. But what's happening is this box here is linked with this particular record, and it allows me to play any audio file on my computer, but I can still use vinyl as the controller. So I can still have that nice vinyl feel, but I can control digital files with it. So I'm playing MP3s and I'm playing WAVs and I'm playing all music that I've created myself or stuff that I've downloaded off the internet. But because I'm old and traditional, I still like the feel of vinyl, and so I can still have vinyl but control digital sounds. Let me talk to you about mixers, because what you'll see in between, this is controlling the music, this is controlling the music, and these pads here are controlling the music, but for each one of them there's a mixer that comes with it. Now mixers are interchangeable, but they fundamentally do the same thing. So in your typical setup, there would be a deck there and a deck there. We're kind of short of space, so we're just showing you one deck because it does exactly the same thing. But this deck is controlled, the volume is controlled here, yeah? So I can turn it up and down, like that, and you'll get that on every single mixer. That's the level for that side, and this one here would be the level for that side. And then the crossfader, when it's on this side, it plays that deck. When it's on that side, it plays that deck. When it's in the middle, it plays both. I can just demonstrate that a bit better. If I load one up to that side. So, when the fader's on this side, it plays there. Fader's on that side, it plays there. On that side, it plays there. And in the middle, it plays both. Yeah? Okay. So that is the levels, the channel faders, and the crossfader. Now what you'll also get on pretty much every mixer is some EQs. So if I can show you, this has got a simple low, mid and high. So I can take all the low end out, take all the mid out, take all the high out. Let's put just the bass back in, just the mid. But let's keep them all nice there. And basically, why that is important on a DJ mixer is because if you're playing two records at the same time, often it's going to sound a lot nicer if you take one of the bass lines out, or you take some of the high end out of one, because if you've got both songs running full frequencies, even if the timing is right, they'll often clash and sound muddy. So it's handy to have EQs so you can separate out parts of the music when you're playing two songs together. That's why they'll all have EQs. Now, another very important thing you'll find on any DJ mixer is for your headphones, where your headphones go. Now, the idea of your headphones is that what you're listening to in your ear is whatever is not playing out of the main speaker. So, if I've got this song on this side playing out of the main speaker, then I want to have Ed Sheeran over here, but just in my ear. So I've got Ed. I've got Ed coming through my headphones, so I can get ready to time it up for when's a good time to drop it in. So I'm going to say, okay, when do I want to drop it? 2, 3, drop. And then I can just switch over. So on every DJ mixer, you're going to need a bit that controls what you're listening to, which side of the decks you're listening to in your headphones. And it's often called a PFL button. And so basically on this mixer, it's by there. And so if that's down, I'll have that side in my headphones. If that's down, I'll have that side in my headphones. And you're also, somewhere on the mixer, it'll be different on different mixers, you're also going to have a volume for your headphones. So this is my volume for my headphones. Over here, I've got some stuff that I'll get into when we get into the more advanced DJing techniques. And then you're also going to have like a master volume out that leaves the desk. Okay, so that's the master. That is how much volume is leaving the desk. And on each side, the gains is how strong the signal is coming in. So if I've got Ed here, if I turn it right down, it'll go quiet. And I can turn it right up. That's the gain. And what's that's for is for matching your levels of the songs coming into the mixing desk. So that's the basic functions of a DJ mixer, but I'll just point them out on this desk here. So crossfader, we've got side A and side B. This actually has 4 inputs, not 2. First mixer had 2, this had 4. So you can decide where you want to come, where the decks want to come in, and then you can set your crossfader. So crossfader A, let's have that on 2, crossfader B, let's have it on 3, and then the crossfader will work like that. Again, these are the levels for how loud you want it to be for each side. And again, if we go up to the top, we've got exactly the same functions. It's called trim on this one, it was called gain on the other, but this is the sound of the, see we go, that's the sound of the volume, and then we've got EQs, so I can take out there, it's highs, mids, and then bass. Okay, and that's my level for it, and the headphones on this mixer are going to be in there. We haven't actually got any plugged in at the moment, but if I turn that on like that, I would get that in my headphones. If I turned that one on, I would get this channel in my headphones. So they're the fundamentals. You've got your trim, that's how loud it's going to be coming into the desk. You've got your EQs, you've got your headphone assign, you've got your levels, and you've got your crossfader. Again, over to this one, exactly the same thing. This has got an inbuilt mixer, but you'll notice exactly the same thing. Trim at the top. See if we can get a tune. Trim at the top. Yeah? Here's our EQs. We can bring them back in. Line fader for how loud we want it to be. And then a crossfader. And for this, our headphones are... Headphones go in there, and our channel assigned for the headphones are, let me just find these, here, Q1, that will give me that side headphones, and that will give me that side headphones. And those are the fundamentals of any DJ mixer, and although if you look at that one, you look at that one, and you look at that one, they look very different, they're fundamentally doing exactly the same thing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about signal flow, and signal flow is very important because it will help you to understand how DJ equipment is set up, but also it's very important because if you press play and the sound isn't coming out, then if you follow the signal flow logic, you'll solve the problem much easier than you will if you just randomly go about trying to guess what the problem is. And believe me, when you're setting up lots of DJ equipment, it often happens that you press play and the sound doesn't come out. So, the most basic signal flow, I'm going to draw an ear for you here, okay? I'm going to have to tell you what it is because you probably won't guess from my drawing. But this, okay, is that an ear? Are we happy with that being an ear? Yeah, all right. So, how do we get the sound from wherever it's coming from into the ear? Now, your most basic setup, the simplest setup, can be as simple as just a laptop with some virtual DJ software on it that'll look something like that, to headphones over the ear. Yeah? Laptop, headphones, job done. Yeah? That would be the most simple one. And as we get more and more technical, I'll leave my ear there. Our most simplest modern day machine would be the controller console, like I showed you. So there is your console unit, something like that. Line faders, crossfaders, EQs, etc. And this, you'll come out of there into a speaker or perhaps 2 speakers, and then the sound will get to your ear. Now, the vast majority of these setups, when they come out going into a speaker, you're going to have a few different options for which leads to use to come out. And so we're going to talk about leads in a second, and I'm going to show you some different options for that. So that's a pretty basic setup, I think you'll agree. Now the traditional setup, I'll leave the speaker there. The traditional setup would look something like this, and this would apply whether they are CDJs or record players. So let's call that the record player or the CDJ. CDJ slash turntable by there, and you'd normally have 2 of them. So this is a record player now, it's a record player, and then you'd have a mixer in the middle. There's your line faders, crossfader, EQs. That's the mixer, yeah? Now, you'd come out of your turntables and into your mixer. So I'm going to put the direction of travel on this as well, yeah? These are the sound sources. These are the things that are creating the sound. So you come out of them and you go into the mixer. And then you come out of the mixer, and at this point you might go directly into a speaker, or it's possible you might have an amplifier there that goes into the speaker. And the difference is there's basically 2 types of speakers when it comes to DJ and hi-fi equipment. You have active speakers which have an amp built into them, and then you have passive speakers that you would need a separate amp for. I would say the active speakers are more convenient because you don't have to carry around an extra amp, but if they're active speakers they will need plugging in directly to the mains. If they're passive speakers they don't need plugging in, but then the amp that you have separately will need plugging in. So that would be your traditional setup using 2 decks and a mixer, whether they're CD decks or vinyl decks. Now there's another interesting component that we can chuck in here, because now you've got the DVS systems, which are the digital vinyl systems, would require also another box, which would be your DVS. Now this would have to go, you'd basically, rather than go out of the decks into the mixer, you'd come out of the decks and you'd go into the digital vinyl system, and then you'd come out of the digital vinyl system and go in to the mixer and then out as we did before. So I hope you're following me. They're coming out of the decks and into the digital vinyl system, then out of the digital vinyl system and into the mixer, then out of the mixer into either your amp or straight into your speakers. It's important to understand signal flow, like I said, because if things go wrong you'll be able to trace through it and work out where you've gone wrong. I'm going to show you some of the leads now, and if I do this, as I do this, this lead is very important when it comes to hi-fi and DJ equipment. This is known as a RCA phono. The majority of the time people just call them phonos, but they're called RCA phonos. Now, they might have a slightly different color. For example, this one's red and white. Same thing, just a different color. And then you might see them even like this, where you'll notice the tips are all the same, and they're phonos. And they'll either have some kind of red indicator and then either a black or a white. Okay? Now, in this setup here, I'm using phonos. Out of the decks would be phonos. Out of the DVS system would be phonos. And then I have an option here, which I'll show you in a minute. But phonos are crucial when setting up DJ and hi-fi stuff. I'll just show you a couple of other leads. This is a jack called a 1/4 inch jack. So it's like the headphone like the end of a headphone, which is referred to as a mini jack. It's just a bigger one of them, and that's a quarter jack. You see these a lot when you're coming out of the mixer and into the amp or into the speaker. So this will often be a jack lead. This here is an XLR, which is often known as a mic lead because it fits a microphone, as you can see. You've got a male end and a female end. Obviously that is the female end and that is the male end. Now you're going to see these a lot, again, coming out of your mixer and into your amp and into your speakers. You're looking for XLRs and jacks at this point, and you often have an option where you can use either. But at this point, going from this DEX to the mixer or the DEX to the digital vinyl system to the mixer, it's all these phonos. These things. Okay, so another lead you'll see quite often, well, maybe not that often, is what we call a kettle lead, and that's used to plug things in. If I just take you over here to buy the DEX, and I can show you how a lot of them are set up, how this current system is set up. So, obviously with power, what we have here is a kettle lead. It's called a kettle lead because you used to see them on kettles. You don't really anymore. Kettles all sit on those little dishes, don't they, that plug in. But historically, that's what you used to see in the back of a kettle, and that's why it's still called a kettle lead. Yeah, and like I say, that just goes to a plug at the other end, yeah? So, you see them a lot. Now, I'll just show you how this one is set up. Obviously, we've got phonos coming from the deck. So, from this deck, this is attached to the turntable. I've got my phono, and it's going into the inputs of my DVS system. And then from the outputs, I've got two coming out because I've got a virtual deck here, and these phonos go into the back of the mixer. So this side going into channel 1, and that side going into channel 2. So you can see on the back of here, I've got my inputs where I can plug stuff in. So you'll notice on the inputs, you'll often have, if I take that out of there, you can see a choice of line or phono. Okay, now because I'm using the digital vinyl system, these will go into line, but if I was using the turntable straight in, they'd go into phono, and that's the only real time that you would use phono, really, on the back of a mixer, is when you're plugging an actual record player in. But whereas I've digitized the whole thing by adding this DVS box, I go into the line. So, signal flow. Here's my sound source. Turn my mixer back on. Here's my sound source. That's my sound source. That is controlling the laptop. So I'm linked to the laptop via this USB cable by here, going into my box. Then the controller is being plugged into the box with my inputs, with my phonos. The box is talking to the laptop, and then I come out of the box and into the mixer. And then from the mixer, currently I've got my options here for my outputs at the top, yeah? So I'm currently using phonos to come out of my mixer. If I can just show you there, phonos, I'm coming out by there, master out, but I can also use XLRs by there to come out with. So I've got a choice, basically. And on some mixers, if I show you the back of this one, I'm coming out of here. Okay, so my inputs are at the top. They're all phonos. All of them are phono inputs. And again, you've got the option to go in phono or line because we're using CDJs. We're going in line. And then our outputs, right now, we've got one XLR set up, which would be going to the active speaker over there. And you know it's an active speaker because it's plugged in and we don't have an amp, because the amp is in the speaker, so it's an active speaker. But you could come out with jacks, we've got by there, and phonos we can come out with. So we've got XLR, phono, and jack options to come out. All our inputs are phonos. And then on this one, we've got two options to come out. So there's no inputs here because the decks, if you like, are built in, so there's no need to plug anything in. We just need to work out how to get sound out. So we've got two options here, and we've got the XLRs and we've got the phonos. In this instance, we've gone with phono, but either would work. So different setups require different equipment and different connectors, but the main thing I want you to take away from this is think about the signal flow diagram. Where is the sound source starting, and what is the signal flow? Where does it travel through in order to get to your ear?